Nigeria to utilize 42.7 billion metric tons of bitumen reserve for construction. Nigeria Customs Service officially reopens Kamba border after 3 years of closure. European markets set to fall at the open just as greater Chinese markets lead losses, with Shenzhen stocks falling 5%. Just as oil slumped to the lowest in almost 2 weeks, extending last week's decline. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Musa Abubakar. Now let's bring you up to speed with business development. Key players in the cotton, textile and garment industries have called for investment towards reviving the sector as planned by the federal government. Musa Baba Aliu reports that the central bank has invested more than 300 billion naira on cotton production in the last 2 years.
The local textile mills do not offtake enough, so the GINA has resolved to exporting.
We are bringing up proposals in such a way that we'll begin to grant these subsidies, those incentives that will be able to enable local producers to compete favorably with players like China.
There is now a CTG Development Forum that is being registered. That body that will represent the entire CTG sector of Nigeria. And in that doing, it means that that body will be the go-to body representing the CTG sector of Nigeria.
Now, joining me to talk more on development in garment and textile industry is Director General, Nigerian Textile Manufacturers Association, Hamad Kwajafa. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Musa Abubakar.
Okay, the CBN has invested more than 300 billion naira in the cotton, textile and garment sector. How is this impacting on the sector?
Well, when it's invested, I assume you are referring to the loans they collected.
Of course.
CBN has injected a lot of funds through the Anchor Borrowers Program to our cotton farmers.
Okay.
But the extent of the amount cannot disclose here now.
Okay.
And most of our members in textile manufacturing have accessed also CBN Intervention Fund, which has helped them in working capital. So to that extent, I think it has done a lot to the sector. And but then we don't have access to market is the issue. We are produced massively, and then there's nowhere to offload the products.
Okay.
Because these are the issues. Now, our markets are saturated and taken over by China with polyester instead of the cotton-based products.
Okay.
So we are now lost in limbo, and there's not much we can do now, essentially.
Okay.
Because there's no market. There's no market for us.
Okay. Are you not taking advantage of the executive order 3, which the president has signed, making ministries,
Yeah,
departments, and agencies to
thank you very
patronize?
much for bringing that up to
Our,
speed. Up to now, nothing much has been done on the executive order 003. What we expected the president and the executive council to do was swear Made in Nigeria one day and launch it at the federal executive council level and encourage Nigerians to buy Made in Nigeria like what I'm wearing. Then our people can come back to work and employment can be generated. But of now, it's comatose and there's no sales going on because there's no money. Polyester has filled up our market and not cotton-based textile.
okay.
This has been the major problem.
Okay, but recent figures also show that the importation of textile has risen to 1.23 trillion. Is that not a source of concern besides what you've just mentioned?
Sincerely, very serious concern because that's why they've taken our market all over. And then anything imported, our government is supposed to pay the textiles a tax adjustment of 10% at the borders as levy. And then we're supposed to have enough funds to defray our overhead costs in production. Because like you can see now, we didn't benefit from AGOA. We cannot export because of the overhead costs of our electricity and gas and other power products. So these are the challenges we face. They are not competitive at all. And what we are saying is that we are not looking for much of injection of funds, but let the infrastructure be taken care of. And let us have a level playing ground. Because most of our competitors have textile parks in their countries. South Africa has more than 60,000 megawatts of electricity. And we are competing with South Africa, Ethiopia. They have textile park, which is funded by government. And they enjoy a lot of subsidy. So essentially, the textile adjustment tax should be something whereby we can benefit and defray our overhead costs and be able to compete all over the world. But sincerely, since the textile adjustment tax was enacted, the textile manufacturers have not accessed that fund up to today. And this has been our major challenge. So all these things should be put in place. Government policies must be implemented to the latter. Just like you mentioned, the Executive Order 003, it is just a policy but not implemented. So
okay, how do we now get the market? Yeah. How do we now get the market? What would you suggest?
Yes, what should be done is to make the textiles competitive in such a way that power supply will be at a tariff equivalent with other developed countries so that we can compete with them. As long as we cannot compete with them, it will be difficult for us to sell our products internationally and locally. Because China is getting incentive from their countries and they can export at subsidized rates and still come to our market and sell 5 yards of clothes at 1,000 naira, while our own costs up to 3,000. So sincerely, the government needs to look into the issue of the textile with a more serious concern. There should be an emergency in that sector.
Oh,
so that the Executive Order 003 or Executive Order 003 must be implemented to the latter.
Oh, should they
because
place a ban?
It's not implemented.
Should they place a ban like we have seen in other products on the importation of textile?
Yeah, as long as our competition is on level playing ground.
Okay.
The kilowatts hour per hour for electricity, for instance, it should be sold at par with other African countries and developed countries, for instance. Because some countries are getting 4 cents per kilowatt hour, while Nigeria is paying more than 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And it makes us difficult to compete with them. And therefore, they are flooding our market and selling it cheaper. And there's nothing much we can do, especially with the coming of the African trade, AFC, FTA, should be there. So that we can be at level playing ground, even our African countries. Because like as it is now, the tariff for Lagos and Kano are even different. Kano is paying higher. And with the closure of the refinery, they have no access to black oil, that they can use as alternative electricity. Refinery is not there, they cannot get the product. and the price of diesel has quadrupled. So how can manufacturers work in this kind of situation? It will be very difficult for them to work at this time.
Will subsidy be a solution? Would subsidy be a solution?
Yeah, definitely. That's why we should have a textile park like other countries. Government subsidizes. Oh, that is why they have this levy at the borders. Like the 1.2 trillion naira you're talking about. 10% of that amount is supposed to go to textile. And textile is supposed to have a bank of that amount, that levy, from the imports of fabrics. 10% is supposed to go to textiles, and they will have their own bank, and they can access the loan free of interest rate. Then that will begin to make us to compete effectively with other countries.
Okay, when all these efforts come to fruition, will Nigerians then get these fabrics affordable?
Yeah, very well. As long as we are at level playing ground with our counterparts, we'll be able to sell at the rates that is being asked for in the market. But as long as we are paying heavily on overhead, on power, and other inputs, it will be difficult for us to sell at a cheaper rate. So this has been the challenges. In fact, we don't have access to market. A lot of companies have now closed because there's no access to market. They produce, they have their warehouses filled up. We have tarpaulin, we have even blankets. But none of them are selling because of the counterfeited goods that come into the country. So government must put in special effort. We appeal to them to look into the plight of textile manufacturers and ensure that they're able to make profit and pay their staff and pay the other overhead costs. Otherwise, it will not be good for us to start retrenching workers at this level. The thinking is that private sector should be an employer of labor, and government is not there to employ people. But then they are not making things good for us to employ people, to employ more Nigerians, because we are producing at a high cost compared to other countries.
Okay, what about the role of private sector in this?
Yeah, everybody is facing the same challenges, especially with the diesel now that has come to high cost. So, but other manufacturers have spoken their minds to government, but up to now it appears people are busy on politics to the extent that economy is not being looked into.
Okay.
So they have to pay attention to economy of the country, irrespective of politics, and be able to solve the problem of the industry.
Okay.
So that all this insecurity will be closed by employing more Nigerians. If you employ more Nigerians, the insecurity will reduce.
Okay.
Because
okay, thank you.
Kano, Kaduna, the textiles are no longer there.
Okay, thank you.
Because of overhead costs.
Thank you very much, Director General, Nigerian Textile Manufacturers Association, Haman Kwajafa.
Thank you, Mr. Abakar. Appreciate it.
Now moving on with an estimated 42.7 billion metric tons of bitumen reserve. Nigeria still imports this product for road and other construction activities. To provide bitumen for local consumption, the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development in 2002 and 2008 embarked on concessioning of bitumen blocks, but was unsuccessful due to failure by the companies to meet up their contractual agreements. Presently, the ministry is again engaging experts to delineate the bitumen blocks for effective utilization.
That the transaction advisor are going to make sure the concession through a transparent process. 15 June 2022, as the date when this request for qualification will be published. That is, on that day, everybody will be availed the opportunity to participate in this process. And at council meetings, especially from the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing and some other agencies that procure roads for us, there's always a review of the contract price for road construction because cost of bitumen has gone up. So most often when they come back to council for this review, it's because bitumen has gone up. And of course, bitumen is imported. Why is it gone up? The exchange rate. this will ameliorate that, because we're going to produce bitumen at a stable price for local consumption, and at the same time we'll be able to export our bitumen abroad.
Officials of the World Bank-assisted State Fiscal Transparency Accountability Program Shifters have been speaking about factors surrounding the $1.5 billion facility shared to states of the Federation. National Coordinator of the program, Mr. Stephen Okon, say it was initiated to ensure maximum utilization of funds in best interests of citizens across the country. Leakatumba Batunde reports that this was disclosed at a workshop for members of the Finance Correspondent Association of Nigeria, FICAN, in Abuja.
Recent history of the nation's fiscal crisis dates back to 2015 and 2016 as a result of oil price shocks, which led to the budget support facility. Two large financial assistance packages by the federal government to the states to help meet basic recurring obligations such as civil servant salaries. The recovery path led to the creation of the Fiscal Sustainability Plan FSP, born out of a need to, among other things, strengthen fiscal transparency and accountability. The $1.5 billion World Bank intervention was a loan to the federal government in the form of a performance-based grant to the 36 states to provide technical support for officials towards successful implementation of the program.
Before any state benefits from the grants, a verification exercise is undertaken, and that verification exercise is led by the Office of the Auditor General for the Federation.
So there's been crazy increased digital maturity transformation across a lot of the states.
Key results and deliverables include increased fiscal transparency and accountability, strengthened domestic revenue mobilization, increased efficiency in public expenditure, strengthened debt sustainability, as well as establishing a transparent, accountable, and sustainable fiscal response to COVID-19.
State governments are encouraged to carry out budget engagement sessions where citizens contribute to the budget, and government accommodates those contributions within the budget.
To have a very good institutional arrangement in place and best practices in terms of public debt management, so that public borrowing and public debt management at the subnational level will be sustainable.
The workshop availed opportunity for officials to explain the rationale behind the SIFTES program implementation, give updates on the status of program implementation by implementation agencies and partners, promote national buy-in, and ensure program sustainability. In Abuja, Leakatumba Batunde, NTA News.
The week ended had the bulls driving transactions in the equities market. Before we take a look at the market today, let's join Moplanda Cock for details.
Last week was a 4th trading week, as Monday 18th of April 2022 was a public holiday commemorating Easter celebrations. The all-share index appreciated by 2% at 48,459.65, closing last week on a bright note. Market capitalization rose to 26.125 trillion naira. Leading the activity chart was the financial services industry with 836.7 million shares valued at 6 billion naira traded in 9,527 deals. It was followed by the oil and gas industry, while the third place was occupied by the consumer goods industry. Trading in the top 3 equities, Fidelity Bank, Zenith Bank and Universal Insurance accounted for 279.5 million shares worth 2.6 billion naira in 2,504 deals. A total of 20,137 units of exchange-traded products ETPs valued at 365,231 naira were traded in the week in 10 deals. Similarly, 62,425 units of federal government bonds valued at 66.8 million naira were traded in the week in 14 deals. All other indices finished higher, with the exception of the NGX Insurance, which depreciated at 0.05%, while the NGX ASM, NGX Afri-Invest Bank Value, and NGX Growth Indices closed flat. 50 equities appreciated in price in the week. 29 equities depreciated in price, while 77 equities remained unchanged.
And now the equities market has kicked off on a positive note as the NGX all-share index appreciated by 0.20% to 48,543.36 basis point. Market capitalization inch up to 26.170 trillion naira, with investors exchanging 328.391 shares valued at 4.038 billion naira in 5,711 deals. European markets set to fall at the open just as greater Chinese markets lead losses, with Shenzhen stocks falling 5%, all slides 3%. Let's join Bosode Eva for a brief look at the market.
European stocks were sharply lower this Monday as the sell-off in global markets continued into the new trading week. The DAX was down 1.82%, the FTSE lost 2.3%, and France's CAC 40 also sank 2.46%. Mainland Chinese indices led losses as Asia-Pacific markets fell sharply following the sell-off on Wall Street. The Shanghai Composite declined 5.13% to 2,928.51. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 3.57%, and Japan's Nikkei also dipped 1.9% to 26,590.78. U.S. stock futures also fell this Monday, pointing to a continuation of an April market sell-off that has pushed the Dow Jones Industrial Average lower for 4 straight weeks. Wall Street is also bracing for a stacked week of earnings, including reports from major tech companies such as Amazon and Apple. Dow futures lost 340 points, S&P 500 dipped 1.11%, and Nasdaq Composite also declined 0.9%. African markets are not left out of the downward trend as all stocks were in negative territory, with South Africa's JSE Africa Top 14 losing a whopping 3.58%. Boss said able Business Express.
And now to energy, oil slumped to the lowest in almost 2 weeks on Monday, extending last week's decline as concern grew that prolonged COVID-19 lockdowns in Shanghai and potential increases to U.S. interest rates will hurt global growth and oil demand. Brent crude was down $4.33 at $102.31 a barrel and touched $101.20 earlier in the session, the lowest since April 12. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude fell $4.26 to $97.81 per barrel. Oil also weakened on the prospect of higher U.S. interest rates, which are boosting the U.S. dollar. A strong dollar makes dollar price commodities more expensive for the currency holders and tends to reflect increased risk aversion among investors. Well, this is where we end this episode of the program. Join us tomorrow by 9:30 a.m. for another episode. Don't forget, you can access all previous episodes on YouTube. We value your feedback. I am Musa Abubakar.